I'm Katie.
I'm Kylie.
And this is
You're Not Paranoid.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the special video edition
Of You're Not Paranoid.
if you're watching. If not, welcome to another episode
Of You're Not Paranoid with
Katie
and Kylie.
That's her.
That's me. Here we are. We haven't done a video in a long time, so
know.
this is exciting. And if you're listening online right now, pause unless you're driving and go watch the YouTube version because why not? Or do both and download and watch the YouTube. That way you can help our stats because we appreciate that.
Yes. And what is it? Like and subscribe to our channel because we do
Below.
Actually have one.
Oh, I hope my armpit didn't show. Below.
You can find us for our audio listeners at You're Not Paranoid podcast on YouTube.
Or on our website, you'renotparanoid.com, and then go to listen and YouTube. Or follow us on we could just keep going.
I mean, the links are
Go
everywhere.
Figure it out, yeah. Links are below, in bio, subscribe everywhere. Leave a review / keep listening. So here we are. Hey,
What's up?
what's happening? So last week, actually, this week requires an episode or a listening of last week's episode.
Yes.
In my opinion, if you want to be kind of in the loop with what we're talking about.
Okay, fair
Actually,
enough.
there's some homework before this episode. So if you haven't done it yet, you could go back and listen and read a book, which is what we're talking about this week.
Yes.
Not any book, a special book.
A very special book.
So last week we talked about the Amish and the Amish community and who are they, what they're about, you know, what is the religion?
Where did they come from?
Where did they come from? Where are they now? Where are they going? Probably not anywhere, but they're going to keep doing what they're doing. But in some regards, we don't want them to do that because there is, like anything, a dark side, oftentimes, to bigger communities or those who are in power. So that is what we touched on at the end of last episode. And we alluded to, next week, tune in because we're talking about this more. So, sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that is the point of a podcast, is to be talking.
The talking.
But so for this week, we have a very special guest that we speak with. She is the ghostwriter of the book called Behind Blue Curtains. Her name is Molly
Maeve
Eagan.
Yep. And she's telling Lizzy Hershberger's true story about her, oh man, it's really heavy, growing up in the Amish community and the complexities of that and her traumas that she endured throughout her life and that processing of everything. And this is like, huge trigger warning for those who have survived, these traumas. We'll be talking, the book talks about rape and incest and a bunch of other horrible things. So if you're not in that space to be able to read that, like, that's kind of our warning to you. Maybe this isn't the right book for you. But if you want to learn more or give back or, educate yourself or become more trauma informed, which is like a huge part of this episode, then keep listening, read the book. You can find it on Amazon or Kindle, I think Barnes & Noble online. And you're going to hear all about it on this episode. And Molly Maeve Eagan is really, really cool.
Yeah, it was such a great interview.
Yeah.
We're really excited to share it with you. And then we'll put all the links to the different organizations or books or podcasts that we talk about in this episode down below. And we'll also have it in the details of the podcast episode.
Like in the podcast notes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But this is like, you're going to get body chills all over like we did constantly. And
we would both suggest reading the book before. It's a very, what's a good word? Entrancing. I don't know if that's a real.
I was like, I don't quite know what
captivating book.
It's a quick read. It makes you. It's a page turner. Like, you don't want to put it down, but and kind of like a bad way, where you're like, how is Molly's story going to unfold? And then you're also going to find out in this episode that being a ghostwriter, sorry, did I say Molly's
Yeah.
story? Well, in a way, you'll find that out as well. But Lizzy's story unfold, Molly being the ghostwriter. We didn't really know what being a ghostwriter is and what that means. So it's kind of unique to interview someone who is a ghostwriter for a story like this, but come to find out Molly was so much more heavily involved in the story and actually there for so much of the story and as it unfolds. So it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should keep talking. I think we should just let you hear it for yourselves. But yeah, if you can, listen to this last week's episode, read Behind Blue Curtains. But truly, I mean, you don't have to listen or read it. You are still going to be mind blown by this episode. So,
Yeah. So without further ado, here's our interview with Molly.
Molly Maeve Eagan. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
This is a whole new world, this podcasting
Right?
world.
Yeah.
And I was listening a little bit to you guys, and I love it, and I subscribed.
Oh, thank you.
That's
Aw.
wonderful. Yeah, that's
Already left a 5-star review.
No way.
Yay.
Aw, superstar.
Awesome.
Thanks, Molly. So just to put it in context, I'm Kylie.
And I'm Katie.
Kylie, Katie. Okay.
Yeah. So now you know who's who.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, so let's see here.
I love the title, You're Not Paranoid, because
Thank you.
I'm learning more and more that when people tell me I'm paranoid or, oh, that sounds like a lot of drama, now I can say, actually, it's life. This is really happening.
Yeah.
I'm not paranoid.
Thank
Exactly.
you. That's like the message of our podcast. So when Jonathan did reach out to us for this was like perfect kind of
Good.
timing, I feel like,
Mhm.
and really good I don't know, good platform for this kind of discussion. So
Great.
we're
Yeah.
excited for this. All right. So, Molly, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Molly Maeve Eagan. I'm a trauma-informed writer, and I am from Brooklyn, New York. I knew nothing about the Amish before I met Lizzy Hershberger. I was raised by revolutionary hippies, not in a church. And I started out as an investigative reporter on a police beat. And I quickly sort of jumped out of the box and started doing things like going to see the guy who just got arrested for shooting a cop at the jail cell and trying to get an exclusive interview, or going to search for dead bodies. Like, I was always reaching for more. And I won some awards and I was very good at it. And then I went in a different direction, and all of it led me to eventually be diagnosed with complex PTSD, which is something that Lizzy Hershberger and I have talked a lot about. It's often stemmed from sexual assault in childhood. And I had to go all the way down to rock bottom and come back out. And it probably took 10 years. And when I started getting better, I met Lizzy. I didn't even think I was going to be recovering at that point. And I really credit a lot of my recovery, and I think Lizzy could say the same, to the writing of this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like the therapy in writing it and going through the process and digesting everything.
Yes. Lizzy, a lot of people don't know this, but Lizzy didn't end up coming forward until almost halfway through our writing process together. She came to me originally wanting to do a little ebook about what it was like to grow up Amish. And she didn't know much about me. And I was working with the silence breakers at that time in the Me Too movement. And I was still really suffering from a lot of symptoms. And we were both able to process, our own sexual assaults through writing this book. And she was able to find the confidence and the strength to come forward against her abuser. So the book really took a turn, and that's due to Lizzy's incredible strength and courage.
Wow, I have so many
Wow, I
chills,
know.
right? Like all the body chills. Like that's amazing
Wow.
to be able to like that's so powerful. And I feel like you feel that in the book. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel now that I know that having read it, I have such a different I'm like still digesting like wait a minute, like that's wild to think that that was the process.
Yeah. We didn't expect this at all. And really it all ended up in this beautiful way that now my life really makes sense. This is what I was meant to do. And, you know, I don't talk a lot about myself and my past because it was really tough. And, you know, but I had the language and more resources to talk about it than Lizzy did. She didn't have anything over an 8th grade education. So, you know, it was a lot of my trying to put myself in her shoes and really explain the grooming process, for example, which I don't think was being talked about enough at the time. But our experiences are actually very similar, even though we're very, very different, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's wild.
Wow.
But
So,
something you guys could I don't know, I felt like I could feel that rawness in the writing.
right. That's
And then
partly because I had no editor.
no, no,
Oh,
No,
not like that. Like just
like
I
the
couldn't stop.
emotion.
Yeah, the emotion. Like in the way that the story is supposed to make you feel. I felt all
yeah.
those things: the hurt, the pain, the processing. And you could. And I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Feel free to jump in, but just I don't know. I felt like I could tell when it was younger Lizzy like confused versus adult Lizzy looking back, like those were very not just because of the time period, but you can just
Yeah.
feel the I don't know emotion back.
Well, when I started learning about the Amish, and this also includes all plain people, so you have Mennonites and Anabaptists, and there are thousands and thousands of them across this country and the world. Um, and I realized that they didn't have a lot of the language that I thought would be necessary to describe this. For example, the word shoved was originally too graphic for Lizzy, especially the word rape. The fact that we got that word in there is a testament to her growth. Um, but I told her, let's write a story like Little House on the Prairie, something that reads like a book that a young Amish woman might be attracted to.
Yeah,
Um, and it made it kind of easy. And also, I didn't have a lot of time at the end. So I just started like asking questions and processing such raw emotion. And we ended up leaving it there. And I think it works, especially for the audience.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also went to Minnesota and I met her family and I shot guns and I flipped an ATV and you know I really it added a lot to my life.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
really cool because I don't think anyone would as an outsider, I don't know what a ghostwriter really did before I read this book and read your,
Yeah.
biography and all that. That's really cool to see how much it impacted you as much as it impacted Lizzy. And it's not just writing it, you're actually in it with her.
Yeah. I think the biggest the best part about writing it was when I went to Minnesota for the sentencing of her abuser. And that's when we met for the first time and we realized she had to write a victim impact statement. And so helping her with that, I realized how impactful those can be, especially from the Me Too movement. They were being published in the New York Times. And that was so fulfilling because I'll never get justice for my abusers. And to be able to write that, it was like a spiritual experience. And the judge got choked up. And I know that we didn't write about what happened afterwards. And a lot of people ask, it wasn't really about him and what happened. It was about her getting to that point. But he was sentenced to the maximum 6 weeks in jail.
Wow. Don't get us started on sentencing laws,
And
but
statutes of limitations,
yeah.
infuriating.
But
But that's
I
not the point. Yeah.
yeah, but I will say that all this led to my helping plain women organize on a grassroots level. And now I'm communications director for Never Stand Alone USA, and so we help plain women escape sometimes or leave for the outside world, come forward to law enforcement. We liaison with law enforcement. We pressure DAs to get these guys into jail. And we're actually doing it. And they're having a little revolution. I mean, these women who were taught to be seen and not heard are coming out to protest.
Wow.
And that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
you know?
No better person than you to lead them with your, I feel like being raised by hippie revolutionary parents. It feels like
Full
it really
circle.
is your calling. Like,
Yeah.
this is like, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy. Just the meeting of two people and like what that can do and what that can lead to.
Yeah, it wasn't always easy.
Mhm.
Lizzy and I are so different. You know, and I went to Pennsylvania to work with Plain Women right before the election. And that was tough because I was raised by revolutionaries in Brooklyn and I was in Trump country and the thing is, and I work with board members who still have a foot in the Mennonite world, men who are conservative and carry guns, but we're able to work together and they can respect my opinion and I can respect theirs. And I'm not sure how to explain how that works, except we're working for the same cause. And if these men can respect me, then I know there's hope. I do, because they're willing to listen. Once we start really connecting on this level of going after sexual predators, we can talk about other things. So that's something else we do.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
huge.
Yeah.
Dang. Earlier, just to follow up, you mentioned the title of like trauma informed writer. Could you talk a little bit more about like what that means?
I think that trauma informed is a big new concept that's coming up. I think in journalism, articles, blogs, any information that goes out, first of all, needs to be survivor centric and led by survivors. And I find a lot of writers tell our stories without the language. And the language is so important. We can't call an underage rape victim having sexual relations anymore.
Yep.
We need to be trauma informed and understand that where this all stems from and like the symptoms, especially that women go through. And there's so much tied to it. And I think we're going in a direction where we're leaning away from this sort of, pharmaceutical focused, I don't know, white male, like supremacy, just I've been in the mental health system. It's not good. And I think if we can be trauma informed and survivor led, we'll be a lot healthier. So I provide content, I do ghostwriting, I'm a recovery coach. And it's really just for survivors of any kind of trauma to understand that they're not crazy and paranoid.
Correct.
That these are valid feelings. Why we don't trust anyone. Were you raped in a barn by your brother, your uncle, and your grandfather? You're not paranoid. This really happens all over the country. And so, yeah, I can get fired up about it.
I know, we do too. You're in the right place for that.
Yeah. And, she's still getting death threats for having published that book.
Yeah, we were going to ask if you even like, have you received any threats or?
Yeah, not related to the book, but as communications director for Never Stand Alone, we do go after sexual predators in the community who have high standing, maybe with law enforcement or in the church or for whatever reason. And I'll get burner phone calls from Texas and all, and it's just part of the job. I'm 48 now and I've lived a long, crazy life. I'm lucky to be alive. So I'm going full force ahead no matter what.
Yeah, like that's
And
not
I
gonna
can
stop
shoot
you.
too. I'm a great shot. Throw that in there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's
Yeah, it's crazy.
let's see. Has anyone from the Amish community publicly or privately come forward to Lizzy? Or I guess I mean, I didn't, when we wrote some of these questions, we didn't know all this information, but after the book has been released?
Yes. So that's actually a good follow-up question, because also, not just death threats. Lizzy was in a bookstore, I guess in Ohio recently, where her book was being sold. And a woman walked in and found out it was her and burst into tears. And this happens a lot. She gets a lot of emails, letters, and I've gotten a lot too, just saying thank you. And also women coming forward. I don't want to exclude men. This is just mostly a female problem. But this woman who she met in the bookstore had taken what she called like the Lizzy Hershberger tour and like tried to find the house she grew up in. And people are really grateful.
Mhm.
And I think for Lizzy, it makes it worth it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, kind of the paradox of it, right? Because you don't know that until you do that, until
Yes.
you tell the story. But to get that courage, then it, basically cycles back and tells you, yeah, I am doing the right thing, or not
Yeah.
even the right. It's, I try to be careful with our language, or I
Yeah.
try to be careful with my
Yeah.
language too, because it's what's right for her
Yeah.
in her time in her at that point in her life,
Yeah. And Lizzy's now a victim's advocate. She's trained, and she's also an interpreter, so that Amish women who speak Dutch or German can speak to law enforcement. And it really took us all down this path of fighting this on a much bigger level. And I love it. I love it. And then I helped a woman who'd been raised Amish, who became a stripper and an escort in Vegas. So, I get doing all kinds of interesting things.
Hey, her choice. Complete opposite. She knows what she wants and doesn't want. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of like revolution, do you think that any of these plain communities will kind of change some of their laws or rules to kind of help these women, or maybe even, stop this from happening?
Well, there are a couple of things happening. There have been some big community meetings out in Pennsylvania. One was about a quote unquote rehab facility for sex offenders called Whispering Hope, which basically unqualified, uncertified, and they're just sexual offenders out in their community. So, on the other hand, though, so they're having meetings now because the community is basically, there's so much pressure for them to shut down these places and to change their ways, that they're starting to have these meetings. And we've had women there, they call us the wild women. And we sit in a row and, we take notes and we ask questions. On the other hand, there was just a Supreme Court decision made that overturns a Minnesota decision. And what it allows is for the Amish to have no septic systems. So they don't need a building permit. They can just poop in the water, and 5 days later it's in the drinking water, and they're sheltered by religious freedom. So if the Supreme Court is going to uphold ridiculous freedom of religion laws that have to do with like bowel movements, I don't think they're going to overturn Wisconsin versus Yoder, for example, which allows them to just stop all education at 8th grade. This is Supreme Court stuff. Like, that's going to take years to dismantle. But we are educating the community, teaching them what their parts are called. It's 101, they don't know the word vagina.
Yeah.
So.
That's what reading it was really interesting to read the book. I felt like it was a great balance of Lizzy's story and also learning about the Amish community or the Plains communities. And like, I didn't know that, about stopping school when you're in 8th grade, and just,
Yeah.
it's really eye-opening, and I feel like it provides some context so that you can picture yourself not picture yourself, but picture how things got to where they are. Like, I'm that kind of person where it's hard to not try to figure out, why did this happen, or how did
Yeah.
this happen? And it's not like there's never like a right answer, so to speak. Like, obviously in this particular story, it's too many we cuss on this a little bit, like fucked up assholes
Yeah.
taking advantage and raping, women and whatnot.
Yeah.
Forgot where I was going with that shit. I was just getting mad.
They get away with it because they put this image out of these peaceful, nonviolent
Yes.
Exactly.
community, and it's not the way it is, but it's great for tourism. So, if I pitch an article, I mean, an article was done for Cosmo by a great journalist named Sarah McClure, but I pitched it to another magazine, and, I found out that one of their major advertisers is this group, an Anabaptist group. So they're not, it's all the same issues, but because they get away with it and they're not punished by law enforcement, it just perpetuates, and they're told, it's okay, you can keep doing this, there are no consequences.
Yeah, the change isn't going to come from the inside.
Right.
Yeah, the pressure from the outside. Yeah.
So you were allowed to be in these meetings, or were these like city, public meetings?
Well, the couple of meetings that just happened recently, I was not at. Other representatives were at. But yeah, they're open to the public. And from what I understand, in these last two, which just happened over the last month in Pennsylvania, I think we caused a little bit of a ruckus, just because the women who were there were former Amish and Mennonites, who one had, half a shaved head with different colors. Another one had a big poofy dress on, and, they're just themselves. And I think it makes them very nervous, the ministers, and they were asked a lot of questions. But there are going to be more, and I'm going to be in Pennsylvania and around the country, just, putting the pressure on DAs, and sitting in courtrooms really is the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the hard part, right? And that's exactly how I felt reading the book, even in the moments within the family dynamics themselves, where this is wrong, but we're going to say, no, things are good. Like, we're going to move forward, even though they're acknowledging that this is not good. Like, no, but everything's great. God will forgive you. Just pray and then get promoted.
Yeah. I had so much trouble processing some of the things that Lizzy would tell me. Some things didn't even make the book, but I just couldn't understand how they could fuss over the color of these curtains.
Yeah.
But then, if a girl comes forward about sexual assault, then she sinned and she's punished, and that's okay. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the story about the cousins that passed, and that was the reason they passed was because of their, the sins. And
yes,
there's always a reason. There's always every consequence is because God is punishing, it seems.
Right. Which is interesting you bring it up, because as a writer, I really struggled with that scene. Lizzy really wanted this scene in about a house fire. And for the longest time, I couldn't understand what it had to do with the larger story. But she was insistent. She was like, no, that has to be in there. I tried to cut it so many times. And then finally, at the very end, I said, we had a long talk about it. And she said, they blamed, we were afraid to say anything because our sister could just get struck down by God. And so I was able to put it together just the way you said, that this is all your fault,
Yeah.
But it was so hard to wrap my mind around it.
Because it doesn't make sense in our world.
Yeah. And the publisher even cut some of the information about the mother, because she was like, who is this woman? Who makes these kinds of decisions? I don't understand. We got to just take it out. And I was like, all right.
Wow.
The truth is,
stranger than
fiction. Yeah, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. And then it was actually really cool to see the pictures too within the
Oh,
book
yeah,
and
that was
kind
really
of
cool.
put a face to Lizzy and her sister and Mem. Is
That
in the second part, I liked that you put the was it the
Like the
the
Dutch.
Dutch words. I felt like I was
mhm.
like picking it up as I was going. I was like, oh yeah, that
Oh,
you know,
good.
I know what a mod is, I know what a mem is, and a dat, you know.
I have to give credit to our publisher who just doesn't get enough credit, Karen Klauman of Nauset Press, because I didn't want to go to a big publisher. Like, I know that world, and I knew that book would be chopped up and it would not be her story anymore. That's not what she wanted. And Karen was the only one who right away got it and believed in us and understood. I would talk to agents and all kinds of people in the industry, and I'd say, well, why doesn't it be a trade book, for people who want to learn about the Amish? And I'm like, what am I not saying to make you get it? And I thought, okay, we just got to get this book out. And Karen did a fantastic job with those pictures. I
Yeah.
was surprised and delighted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
And I actually got to go to that house with Lizzy and Royal, her sister, when they went back there for the first time. I was with them.
Oh, wow.
And it was me who saw the little girl screaming and was like, and then her sister, but I was able to actually observe some of what I wrote, which was nice.
That's really I
Wow.
have like all the body chills. Like I'm gonna get them all over the like this whole time, but that's really cool too. Like, cause we would never. I'm so glad we're doing this because we would never know that like really cool insight as to why it feels so real. Because you're actually
Yeah, you're
really
way more
there.
involved in this story than
I feel like
you would
expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I've been wanting to do an interview. I'm understanding why these interviews are good. I was so bad at it at first. And you guys are making it super easy.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, it's just, I love it. I love sort of jumping into somebody else's life and I don't like to over edit. I really like to understand what their voice is. And you can bond with a person that way, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
so
mean,
curious. I know this interview is about me, but
No.
yeah.
friends or like, how do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Well, we were former coworkers turned friends, and Kylie came up with the idea. I mean, I can tell my version.
Yeah, tell your version. Yeah.
I was at my desk one day.
Well, you have to give really quick before you get to that part. So we listened to other podcasts too, like My Favorite Murder and Serial, all the like true kind of like a lot of true crime ones and ologies about like science and whatnot. And so we would be at work and we're science girls, and so we're just doing our lab work and we'd just be chit-chatting about the podcast we listened to, or like, oh, like, did you see that new Netflix murder documentary, just stuff like that. And then we would just have these really great in-depth conversations. I'm like, we should record this. We should do this for us. Like, why not? Let's try it. And then that's when I was like, hey, Katie.
Yeah, just very casual one day. She's like, hey, you want to do a podcast together? And I was like, sure. And she's like, great, because I already have the name secured and I have the website and like boom, 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 like we're gonna record
great.
basically. So
I'm a true crime addict. I just can't get enough. It's crazy. Okay, and where are you located again?
Yeah, we're in Southern California.
Oh, okay, good. So am I.
Yeah,
nice.
Cool.
Okay.
Very good. Locals. Let's see. Yeah. And then the actual name, You're Not Paranoid, stemmed from my then boyfriend, now fiance. I would, did you lock the doors? Did you set the alarm? I'd always ask these questions and he's like, you're so paranoid. You're so paranoid. Meanwhile, I'm watching all these true crime documentaries of like, they didn't lock the door. Not that it's their fault, but like there are just some things that could be prevented. And that's basically my mentality is, of course, like these horrible things that happen to people, it's not their fault. But if there's something that can be done for future by learning and talking and discussing, then let's do that. So the You're Not Paranoid was kind of like a self-affirmation.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you're not paranoid, you're not paranoid. And then the funny part is once we get talking to people, I've never talked to one person who didn't, as I'm saying double negative, every person I've ever talked to always has a story that would be perfect for our episode, like perfect for our podcast. Like everyone's been through something insane. And it's like,
well,
let's
yeah,
talk.
and also I like what you're saying about in the past when I was like beaten up by my boyfriend as a teenager, I couldn't do anything about it. And for years I beat myself up like in my head. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Well, it took me training in boxing for 3 years
Nice.
to understand why I didn't do anything. I didn't know. Now I do. And that's how you can start to take your power back is what could I have done differently? Well, I can do that now, you know?
Exactly. And that's what we're hoping to create, maybe a safer community, maybe more more awareness. And like that's why we try to be careful with that language too, because I feel like in the true crime community it's very easy to victim shame and blame,
or
and,
even like fear monger
and like we're not here for any of that. We just want to talk about it true, the most truthfully that we can, raw that we can. Sometimes the things that we talk about are like really scary, but then we'll go into the stats. Like, well, how likely is this to happen? Okay, so not that likely, but now you're aware. So if it ever comes up, you have, at least you've seen it or heard about it before.
I've only been here for about a year and a half. And I have to say, this is one of the most strange areas. I will say I'm in LA though. And I just see things and I'm like, this is like a TV crime show. Like I'm living in an episode of Law and Order. There are old ladies sleeping in alleys. There's like, I see people and then I see a missing persons poster. It's like, there are all these crazy stories here. And I end up doing like weird web sleuthing. Like, I don't know if you saw Don't Fuck with Cats.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen it yet because I have a cat and I don't think I could bring myself.
I do too. And I was able to not see any of the graphics.
Yeah, I had to turn away.
I really did too. But at one point, the woman says, I spent 16 hours online looking at Lithuanian doorknobs. And I was like, that's my girl. I could do that.
That's like, I think if we could each, be paid for internet web sleuthing to solve crimes, like we would be all over that 100%.
100%. Yeah.
We were talking about how it would be cool if there was, because it's really frustrating that you have to be, of course you can do like your own investigative work, but to be a detective, at least in California, you have to go through the whole police academy and sheriff's department, blah, blah, blah. We were saying, we were hoping one day that there could be like a, what's another word for the lawyer, the person?
The paralegal.
Like a paralegal for investigators. We're on board. Like we'd like
Me too.
like that job.
I would work for free. And I could do it all day and I wouldn't get my investigator's license. I heard it's not worth it. But when I was a police reporter, the state police said, hey, are you interested in becoming a detective? I was like, hell yes. And they said, well, you'll have to spend at least a year in our Smokey the Bear hat with the purple bolo tie, giving out speeding tickets. And I was like, hell no, like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I don't know how that's related to like investigative skills. So, I mean, if they ever change that, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Do you guys listen to any other new true crime podcasts?
Ooh, do you have something in mind that you're recommending?
Well, I'm curious what you think of Strange and Unexplained.
Ooh, I actually haven't heard that one yet. I've seen it, but I haven't. I've like seen I think I've seen it on social media, but I haven't actually watched it or listened to it yet.
Okay. That's my sister.
That's amazing. I think we have some more questions, if you don't mind.
No, it's fine.
Do you have a message, or Lizzy, or together, have a message for those who are suffering in silence the way that Lizzy did for so many years?
Yes. First of all, don't let anybody gaslight you. Like, your experience is valid, your feelings are valid, and more people are becoming aware and are willing to help and are becoming trauma informed. So I think if you reach out today, it's going to be different than if you reached out even 10 years ago. I've reached out to hotlines and that's not the best option for me. So I don't like to just say, call a hotline. I really need to find people I can trust. And for a lot of sexual assault survivors, we don't feel like we can trust anyone. But anybody is free to contact me through my website, mollymaeve.com. I'm happy to engage and answer questions. My road to recovery was very long and involved and had lots of different things that worked and didn't work. But reach out to another woman, and if they don't believe you or don't listen, keep reaching out, and I promise somebody will help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's true, because not all therapy is the same for everybody. And not all the resources, like you said, it's not. I feel like the easy response is to call a hotline or.
I called a hotline a couple of times and I got men, and I remember I asked for a woman. They were like, "Why do you want to talk to a woman?" I was like,
my
Oh my
I didn't call to talk about that. And I just, so yeah, it's not easy to just say, "Hey, there's this one solution out there." But there are a lot of us who are coaches and who will take time to listen, you know.
Yeah. How would you recommend becoming more trauma informed? Like, we would want to be more that way. Like, I think we are, just from, listening to good speakers, reading books, but I mean, you are a strong advocate and
Mm.
a really good resource, as you're saying. So, what would you recommend even for us as a podcast?
Well, for anybody suffering with complex PTSD, I would recommend The Body Keeps the Score, which is the Bible. It's not an easy read, but the concept is basically about how we process trauma somatically. So a lot of our illnesses are actually trauma-based and need to be treated as such, and not just about the diabetes or whatever. There's so many physical ailments. Wait, what was the question?
How we as a podcast, and any
Right,
listeners and
right.
anybody who wants to become more trauma informed.
I think, if you follow, like, there are a lot of really great silence breakers talking, now that Cosby was let out, a lot of those survivors are speaking in trauma informed terms. Um, I'm working with somebody on the survivors article about the survivors movement. So I think if you just, stay aware and listen to survivors first and foremost, and promote their work and ask them what they think, and don't try to speak for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point.
Very good.
A kind of similar question. Do you think there's a way that, like, we, as like what the Amish would call English, can do to help the Amish or Plain communities?
Yes. Never Stand Alone USA does a lot of work on Facebook. I would say if you have a copy of our book and you're done with it, you can always stick it in a nearby library or at a pie stand if you live near those communities. But also, I think just be aware. If you live around those communities, be aware of what's going on. And if you see your local district attorneys letting people from those communities go for serious crimes, you got to do something about it. I think that's hard for everyone, is actual action, making the calls and showing up to court, but it works. We can call a DA now and say, "Hi, we're calling from Never Stand Alone, and this can be good press or bad press," and they will do something about it. That's power.
That is power.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say my dad's side of the family is from Pennsylvania. And just reading this book, I was so blown away because, like, it's what you say is true. It's touted as such like a touristy thing. Like, when we go visit, like, we go to Lancaster and be like, oh, like, like the smorgasbords and, like, the cutesy little, like, trinkets and stuff. And, like, not even being aware of, like, the reality of it is, it's sucky. Like,
Oh,
looking back at it, it's like, oh wow, like I could
yeah.
have been around someone, and not even have known.
Yeah, I didn't know. A great podcast about the Plain People is the Plain People's Podcast with Jasper Hoffman and Mark Mason. You guys would love her. She is an ex-Mennonite and she's just doesn't give an fuck, like. And it's a great podcast, and I think Lizzy was on it. So if you want to learn more, she always is interviewing people who've left with all kinds of crazy stories.
Yeah,
I
that
could see
sounds
you
really
guys hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pick her brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Cool.
I was
Yeah, no, I was like,
I had like a follow-up question. I'm
oh,
like,
sorry.
okay. No. Just edit this part out. Sometimes we think while we're
Yeah, so it's good to do.
So I guess this is not a question we had written down, but I'm just curious. It's pretty amazing, and I feel like a testament to her faith, how Lizzy's still at the end of the book was like, I love you, mom and dad, and like I love my family and I love everybody, and it still felt like she has a pure heart for the Amish community, which I feel like I would struggle as a reader. I was like, but why? Because it's not, and that's, I guess I can go into that question. It's, is this an Amish thing, or is this a really horrible people thing? Because it feels like more of a, I know that in all religions or anybody who is in power and able to manipulate, that this is what happens. So I was kind of having that, struggle in my mind.
I will say this, that all of the former Plain people that I talked to, the women especially, some of them hate all of the Plain communities. But I think for Lizzy and her sister, they are very appreciative of the work ethic that they have, that they could survive in the outside world, that they could bake, that they could wash clothes without electricity if needed. I think they feel, especially when they come out into the English world, they feel more grounded in those ways. The other woman that I helped with the book, who went to Las Vegas, she had a very nice childhood. Ironically, like, she just went the other way and she loved her Amish upbringing. So, but so I guess, of course, there are good people everywhere. But, I will say they have an amazing community ethic. If I need anything at all, I have people from Pennsylvania asking if they want, if I need them to fly out here to help me. And
Wow.
that comes from barn raising. You have people coming from all over just to help you put up this house. And so they've sort of welcomed me into that. I have this whole extended, reliable people, and when I go to visit them, it's like I'm picked up at the airport and they're making breakfast and they're cleaning up, and I can barely do anything to help.
That was kind of like what I gathered too, is even like, I think, and I don't know if this was also a real experience, but when I think Royal went to visit Lizzy, she was like tidying and cleaning and cooking, like just like on the minute, constant, just like that work ethic is nonstop. Almost, yeah. I don't know if that's like a good thing or could be a flaw in terms of not being able to relax. That wasn't really my point of going there. I was trying to go there. I just kind of thought about that, but I gathered that from
right.
the book too.
I think you're right. And I also learned a lot from both Lizzy and her sister. This is touchy, forgiveness. This is a big word in the Plain community. But when you say that she says she loves her mother and her father, that's real, and so does her sister. And it's hard for me to understand, especially because Lizzy added the scene in the book where her father makes a pass at her, which was heartbreaking for me to hear. And she revealed that later. And the fact that they can just have love in their heart, I think, is a good thing. On the other hand, like, Lizzy has put boundaries up where her mother is concerned. It still means she still will go visit her if needed and has love. But I mean, I don't think we should forgive. I don't want to encourage women to just forgive their abusers. And that's not what they're doing, because there were boundaries. But that's the way they are. You know, I think that's a hard pill to swallow. And I had a difficult childhood with difficult parents, and I love them.
Yeah. And I didn't mean, that was a really loaded
Yeah.
question. I probably should have prefaced that.
No, I'm glad you asked, because it's kind of, it's beautiful for her. It speaks to Lizzy's heart, but it's, she did hold them accountable.
Yeah. And that's where it was like, whoa. Like, I think I was more surprised. And I didn't mean that for that to come off like judgy at all. I meant more
No.
like that, I guess, is also a testament to her healing and her processing
Absolutely.
and everything else. So it kind of made me like, I don't know, the book, I was just kind of like mind blown so many times. I'm like, whoa, like despite everything, like
it's so
like,
complicated.
she's so strong. Like I don't.
Well, it taught me how to put up boundaries with my own family and still love them. It was, you know, it was just, I mean, it's just touching for some reason to have you remind me that she said that, you know, it is. Even though he was a horrible person in some ways in my mind, you know, whatever the judgment is, it was touching.
Yeah. And there's also always more to this story than just those, you know, interactions that she's just talking about in this story. And I feel like that's kind of like the full circle reminder of like, no, this is her whole life. This isn't just like we're only seeing, you know, the pages of what we're covering, but it's not all the rest of it either. And that's what makes it so complex. It's not easy. It's not cut and dry. It's not just a trauma story, just a survivor story. It's her life.
Yeah. And it's healing to let go of hate, any kind of hate. I mean, I have so much anger and hatred and unforgiveness toward my main abuser. And I certainly wouldn't say that in a book, but he's not my father. And that's the thing, is like, it's like a God thing. You have to just accept like that there was some love and goodness there, because that's the person who helped create you. So I think that's also why a lot of, you know, incest survivors, for example, don't come forward, because, and it was confusing also for a 14-year-old girl who'd never been shown affection at all to be shown any affection by that man, you know. So him just brushing her shoulder, or that feels like love to a young girl. Probably didn't feel like love to him, but it felt like love to her.
I got really mad at the end when I think it was Aiden was like, oh, like if she says it was true, I guess so.
Oh yeah.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like that what you're saying right now was really well portrayed without, I don't know, just from like a writing standpoint.
Thank you.
Without saying it. Like I felt that. And I was like, oh, I can see how that feel like I don't know. You're in her mind in that moment.
Well, it speaks to grooming, which you know, I was groomed, you know, and that's a public story by James Toback. I was one of 400 women who came forward, and I was 15 at the time. But I think a lot of people don't understand. They're like, oh, she was 15, 16. It was consensual, and your mind is just not developed enough. Especially predators can sniff out victims. They can see who's already vulnerable. So it's just very easy, if somebody shows you the right kind of attention, to mistake it for love. And that's a trauma bond that can last a lifetime, you know?
And it's super important to talk about, because maybe someone else might not realize that that's what happened to them. Like, hey, this sounds familiar. Why do but then also the adult part, you know, the pedophile easily moves on or dismisses or whatever. And then they feel like they did something wrong. Like, why am I not earning the affection? You know, I felt that dynamic as well. And it's like, oh my God, like but I feel like you do a really good job of creating that complex processing.
Thank you.
Like as a reader. Yeah.
That's a huge compliment.
Well, you're welcome.
Do you have any thoughts on how like Minnesota is reforming their laws for like in terms of like the statute of limitations, like how that in this example specifically, how Aiden was, I don't know if it's the word prosecuted to the law as it were, or as it was
Yeah.
in the time of the occurrence. I mean,
Well, that's a really good question, because actually the only reason they took her case is because he was an employer. So the statutes of limitations would have run out if he had just been her pastor, or some guy. But the fact that he was technically her employer made it eligible. Um, she didn't, I don't even think Lizzy really wanted the case to go forward. She just wanted to do something to feel like he was going to be held accountable. And it was the county's decision to, move forward the way they did. And it was just that technical aspect that helped her out. I mean, I think statutes of limitations should be abolished everywhere, especially now, everything we know about how long it takes to process. And I recently read that the average age to remember early sexual trauma is 52. And I was like,
whoa.
51. I was like, I have 4 years to go. Like, is that, like, I don't want to scare anybody, but it scared me. I just thought that should be evidence right there for up to abolish statutes, so
Yeah.
all victims can come forward. And look, it's very hard to prosecute. So it's not like you can just come forward for fun, which no one would do, or money, which never really works. It's anybody who's going through that process, to me, is legitimate.
Yeah, it'd be great to reform these laws, and the fact that they're on a state level, I don't know, that always bothers me. Like, why isn't this a federal thing that should be applied everywhere and
Yeah.
be held accountable? Like, what's the why have yeah, what's the point of this? I probably should look that up. Like, what is the point? What was the original idea of a statute of limitations? Like, did people just not live that long back when these things were like occurring? So they're like, they're old, like it's fine, but it's still not okay. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
I just think it's a lack of being trauma informed. Like, people were like, well, if you want to come forward, you got it, like anything else, like an insurance lawsuit, you
Like,
have 3
time's up.
years. Yeah. I do think that they will be abolished, maybe on a federal level. That would be great. That's a great idea. We should pursue that.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's
that's
do
what we're not very political, but I feel like that would be something that, like, I could be political
Oh,
if it was
great.
something that was this, worth it, that could actually be really affect people.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about like sex trafficking and stuff on your podcast, I think that's political. You're making a statement and you're disseminating good information.
Yeah, we did. We actually released the episode very recently.
I like that.
Re-released it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even in the Amish community, like within the story, it is trafficking, when she's working for free, I know as a mod, I believe when she was even younger.
Yeah. 9, I think they started.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." But then that's okay because that's just the way it is. So those are the
Right.
kinds of things that I'm like, will that ever change? Is that still how it is today?
I think we need to, this whole freedom of religion thing. I mean, I love it. I get it, but to shelter people from basic human right laws and also having shit in our drinking water has
that's
nothing to do with what you believe in. You're
Yeah.
worshiping. It's just ridiculous.
like you can murder someone within your religious community, but
Yeah.
That's probably
you
been
can
an
open up a can of
offense.
worms, but that's basically
Yeah.
like
Right.
who's monitoring, right? Like, is someone gonna be within the community, like the watchdog? And how do you
Well, a lot of these guys just admit it because they don't even know it's wrong. We
Oh
had
my
one guy, he was asked, did you rape this girl? And he said, yes. Is that wrong? And another one in another case said, this is the way it's always been. They just, like, that's how sheltered they're allowed to be. That's not okay.
Wow.
If you don't know that rape is wrong, against the law, you need to be taught that. Maybe they're going to be taught that in jail. I don't know.
Or at least, yeah. Oh my God.
Well, that's what makes me
that's
feel like they don't want to change it, because there would be multiple ways that you could teach like young boys and girls these things.
that's been such a tradition, or the way it has been, or the games that are played in the barn, and like I don't know,
Mhm.
just like there's so it's like that's where I was like trying to going back and forth. I'm like, is this an Amish thing or is this a bad people thing? Like, are people passing down traditions that are just like really messed up, or is this really how it is across the Plains
The
community?
barn animals thing is true too. Sorry to tell you.
And like can we like I don't know undercover Amish, go in and like
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Uh-oh.
I mean, these women aren't messing around, you know. We wear these sweatshirts that says "Ask your bishop about me," which were designed by Jasper Hoffman. And yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things are going to start happening. You know, when you've been traumatized that much, it's hard to settle down. I think, especially if you've recovered. Once you've recovered from something like that, it's sort of like waking up again. Um, you know, I used to not be able to have a conversation or speak in full sentences. So once you wake up from something like that and you've gone through the recovery process, it's like all your energy is, I feel like sometimes I have super senses, you know, and I think these women, they're just coming out more and more, and the men are too, you know, their husbands and their families. And I'm going to enjoy the journey, even if I don't see the end result,
yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
I mean, progress is huge because I feel like progress isn't a word in the Amish community. That's not really their
Right.
thing. It's about tradition and keeping things as is. So the fact
Yeah.
that things are changing even a little bit, like you said, that mutual respect that they're having these conversations and communicating, that's huge. And they're coming from the
Yeah.
higher leaders, it sounds like.
And also just seeing one woman start to regain self-respect and stop cutting, or, you know, take off her head covering for the first time and realize she's not going to get struck by lightning. Like, those moments are worth it. You know, I'm only going to be here for so long, but it's so fulfilling.
Yeah, I don't know. You exude it. I feel
I
like you're
know.
like I feel like I'm like empowered and you know,
Good.
that's
Good.
awesome. Yeah, really cool. Have the police been able to do anything about the threats to Lizzy, or even I'm assuming other women coming forward, you know?
It's, well, not with Lizzy. I don't even think I think she's sort of over it. She's just
Like
like,
just
come and
wants
get
to
me. I'm loaded, locked and loaded. She's really empowered. But we did have another survivor we're working with receive death threats. And we're working with the DA right now who's saying, oh, there's not enough evidence. That's what they always say. And it's really just up to somebody to keep calling, and who can say, actually, you do have enough evidence because of the law. And that's sort of where I come in and other people come in to hold them accountable, because especially these local DAs in the middle of the country and in the South, they're used to being able to like talk down to somebody. If somebody comes in and doesn't have a ninth grade education, you might be able to say whatever you want about the law. So, you know, we can follow up with the DA and say, hey, they told one of our survivors, they told us that they had been in contact with the survivor constantly, and they had just told her to get over her rape. And we were able to call them out and say, well, we are working with her now. And they, you know, and we understand the law in the case. And they were just like, oh, okay, guess we can't lie anymore. You know, and they were able to press charges. So it just takes a lot of, people really underestimate women.
Yes.
Mhm.
I love it. Keep underestimating me. It gives me more power all the time because they make stupid mistakes. I shouldn't even say that, but you know what? I don't care. They're going to underestimate me anyway.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what we have. I mean, we have to do that, right? They're going to
Yeah.
be underestimating anyways. Why not just go full throttle forward with
Yes.
it? Because either way, it's not going to change. the outcome or the is oh
My kitty.
Aw,
hi. So
Okay.
cute. That was awesome. Oh man. All right, let's see. Okay.
Go for it.
So something else that I just came to mind that I kind of struggled with as a reader the way I think I'm supposed to was Titus's reaction to Lizzy coming forward, because I thought he would understand more, but yet his Amish ways still also came through, and I was like, but but I really thought that was really good to leave in the book that way also, because it's true, and because it's, I mean, at least as a reader, that's what I gathered, and it's raw, and that's the messiness of this, is that it's not, oh, like super supportive husband who understands and now everything's going to be better, I'm going to save the day. It's like, no, Lizzy has to save herself, despite
Right.
what she's going through.
Right.
And obviously now that we know, you're helping save her too. And she's helping save you, and that's what makes it so beautiful, right?
Well,
Yeah, that was a
yeah.
huge struggle for me. I was like, what? This is not what I expected.
It's so interesting again that you bring that up, because Titus, and I won't say too much, Lizzy, but it was more complicated than you might think.
Okay.
You know,
As you would probably expect. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot going on. And, you know, I think if she would allow me to say that her family didn't understand why she wanted to talk about it at first. And it was frustrating for me. And I would get little editing notes, like her husband, oh, that, you know, my husband said that's too graphic. And I'd be like, your husband's fired. Like, he's not, like,
Get him out of the room.
yeah. However, when I was at the sentencing, her husband showed up in a suit, you know, and he was there in the prayer circle with us. And, you know, and there were times afterwards, and I don't think he'll hear this, but where she was like, I don't want to make him a good guy, you know, and it's interesting that you picked up that it was complicated, because even after the sentencing, I think things were not easy, and they never will be in a family where someone's doing that. But I didn't want to complicate things too much. Like, they're married, they're both former Amish, they've stayed in the community, and a lot of the dynamics in a marriage, I think, stayed the same. And as Lizzy, or any woman who's sort of becoming more independent, I think there's going to be, you know, some concern, especially if she's getting death threats. So
Yeah.
he's a great guy. Her family's got some great Hillary jokes.
Yeah, but that's what I did. Like, that complex part of it was definitely showed. And that he did, after everything, he does, of course, want to be there for her, even though it's complicated. But at the end of the day, and this is kind of what I gathered too, and I'm just saying me, but I feel like we both are probably feel this way, is that it's not about him.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter if he's on board or not. And even for her kids, I think that was kind of like also a testament to her strength of like giving her kids and future women permission to tell their truth and know that it's okay. And like her checking on her girls. And I just felt like I wanted to reach into the book and be like, Lizzy, like, you're not paranoid. Like, ask your kids if something's happening, or like all like that whole, I have the chills, just like the dynamics. And I should have got my book out. I took so many notes and highlighted so many things. But when she was like, she's laughing at me, like she's saying, you know, there's that quote, I should have written it down, where it was something like, oh, he's asking for it. It was the male student. And then she's like, she's talking about me. And obviously the daughter doesn't even know this. Yeah. But yet it's like, I couldn't imagine being the daughter now, reading that back and being like, I didn't know, you know, that's what's happening behind the blue curtain, you know.
But it started everything. I mean, and her daughter, you know, there were also seeing her daughter there, you know, editing the victim impact statement, and
that was
really
cool.
Nice. It was really nice. You know, I will say, if I had had more time and an editor, I might not have started the book from a 4-month-old perspective. I know that that's weird and people have a problem with it, but honestly, you know, the book, I just, I wanted it to be from her own memory, and there were a lot of letters and people that she talked to. So that's the one part that I sometimes think about. I'm like, would I change that? But overall, I think it's a miracle it got published and that it's even doing as well as it is. Next, I want Reese Witherspoon to play Lizzy and make it into a movie.
I was gonna say, will this be like I'm picturing it being a movie. I could
I
totally
know,
see that.
Reese, like wherever you are, this is the role for you, or anyone. I could totally see this being a movie too. Yeah.
Like 100%.
The best
I mean,
way
there's
to
a
write a
movie in my
book.
mind.
Yeah, just the way I read it, I think I read it in just like one day.
Yeah.
It was just like so easy to read, and like, yeah, it has that flow of like I could totally, like, I was imagining it as like, movie.
Yeah. It was
Kind
a
of like-
super quick read in that way for me too. I just
I
like
couldn't
That's
put
such
it.
a compliment.
I couldn't
Yeah.
put it down.
I
was like-
couldn't either.
Wow. Like I'm so amazed that people think it was well written and that it was good, just because for so long I was the only one who looked at it. I couldn't say to anybody, hey, does this work? Or like, does this keep the plot moving forward?
Yeah, I wasn't like, there was no like lulls for me. There was no.
Oh, that's so great to hear.
I just
love you guys even more now.
Yeah, and we're not like kissing your booty either. Like, this is just like, I don't know. I mean, we read the book just based on the conversations we're having, but like, yeah, just
I can tell.
totally
Not all podcasters read the book.
Shame on them.
Yeah, they're missing out, but
Yeah, they're definitely missing out.
Thank you guys so much.
yeah.
So let's see. Want to do the next one?
Oh yeah. So speaking of the book, where can people follow you? Buy the book? Like any shout outs you want to do, like for your org or?
Yeah. Well, I'm at mollymaeve.com or mollymaaveeagan.com. Let's see. I Never Stand Alone USA is on Facebook. You can find Behind Blue Curtains on Amazon. I think at Barnes & Noble online on a Kindle. And soon to be a movie starring Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
Yes. Let's make this happen.
I'm on Instagram, but I grew up with a rotary phone. Like people should just like reach out if they have questions. I'm more than happy to.
That's really cool how you make yourself available in that way.
And Lizzy does too. She put her address, I think, in the back of the book. It's a P.O. box, but yeah, we do want people to reach out, not in a creepy way.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to say to any survivor is, even though predators could smell us, I think Tyler Perry said they could smell blood in the water around a victim. Once you become empowered, you can smell a predator. You have that power. And I can tell when somebody's lying or somebody's trying to manipulate me, like all those things become much easier. So, it is damaging, but it can turn you into something that you never imagined.
Unstoppable.
Yes. Unstoppable.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I feel like especially people who are going through that to hear.
Yeah.
There is like, it gets.
I was prepared to die a few years ago. I had no idea that I would recover this way. So there's a lot of hope,
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm really happy you're here.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
That's insane. And that's something too, like just for myself at least. Of course, you can't compare miseries, but I haven't been through some of the traumatic things that, are talked about in the book and whatnot. But I still want to be supportive and I still feel supportive. And like that, we really preach this heavily on the podcast is empathy and just being there and hearing. And so we're definitely going to, make ourselves more trauma informed in that way as well. And just to our listeners, like, of course you can reach out to us too, and we'll help put you in touch with Molly and Lizzy. And, you
guys are doing a great job.
Oh, thank you very much. We really
great interview.
Oh, thank you. Same to you. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and Lizzy. So we really appreciate that. Any other future projects in the work? in the works?
Yeah, I mean, I am working on recovery coaching with people not only recover from like alcohol, but complex trauma. I'm working on a book about the survivors movement with Tim Lennon from Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And then I have various projects. I travel a lot. I have my own book about surviving complex PTSD. I just sort of got better and came back, and I'm 48, and it feels like I'm just turned 30, So I'm just looking forward to all of it.
That's awesome.
And I'd love to do a podcast one day.
Yeah, you'd be
Yes.
great. You'd be wonderful. I mean, we would listen.
Mm-hmm.
Hands
Thanks,
down.
guys.
Yeah. And what was your sister's podcast again?
Strange and Unexplained with Lizzy
Strange and
Eagan.
Unexplained. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
she did
cool.
more of a tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lover or lover?
Lover or lover, yeah.
Yeah. Any other shout outs you want to give or anything that you'd want to say even to Lizzy on the podcast or?
Well, Lizzy knows, I think, that I'm looking forward to hearing all the rest of the chapters of her book. And I think it's just a testament to the recovery process and to, I don't know, women who have nothing in common bonding and going on a healing journey together. I love all the women that I work with. Even if they just called to find out, how do I get this earring out of my ear? I got a speeding ticket. Like, I love it. I love doing it every day. So I guess, my biggest message to survivors is just that I know that it feels like sometimes there's absolutely no hope. And I feel like I'm testament that there is, and Lizzy Hershberger is testament that there is, and there are ways, and just please reach out.
Very good.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, thank you so much for your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Molly. Like, you are wonderful and I feel so inspired.
I know, I was gonna say I feel so empowered. I was like, let's go. Go.
And that's really cool you do boxing. I do jiu-jitsu and a bit of boxing as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like that's also another way for women to kind of feel empowered or even
Absolutely.
go shoot a gun in a safe way at a shooting range under supervision.
Learn how to throw a good straight right punch,
Yeah. Very cool. So awesome.
Well, you guys are a blast. Thank you.
Oh,
no, thank you.
All right. I hope to see you guys again in the future.
Yeah, that would be really cool actually to do other episodes, because especially since you're a true crime addict as well.
I've got lots of stories. Like, I've got somebody from the Monarch Project, which, I mean, look it up.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
That would make you paranoid.
We'll have to have you back, especially if you're open to it. Just having these kind of
yeah,
like you feel like a third person in our podcast right now.
Crazy ass stories. Like, I've worked with survivors from all different, and yeah. Okay, for sure. All right, I'll get your email. All right, bye guys.
Bye. Thank you.